Hello, guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing another part of our Jurassic World Evolution 2 mod spotlights. We take a look at some of the wonderful mods people are making and use them to compare them to their real life fossil counterparts. Completely butchered that, but that's okay. So part 106. I'm really excited about this one. So if you guys have been following the modding scene, Hawkowl actually released his update for the Sauropod Cosmetics pack and made a lot of really awesome changes that I'm really excited to get stuck into. And actually, a lot more updates on Dinosaurs since he made the last one, and it's actually been quite productive. So quite excited to get stuck into that one. But we've also got some other, because I don't want to make it another one dominated by Hawkowl. And plus the last video I made when I covered all of them, that was like an 80-minute video. So I thought I'd chop it down a bit, split into half, but also give the opportunity to put some extra bits for extra mods and stuff. So we're going to be starting off today. Before we start off with the sauropods, we're going to start off with a small little oviraptorid. We have got Enodeferon or Eoneferon. This is Enodeferon, which is done by NetRaptor, and of course the bug happens. Yeah, and it does happen. There we go. Love this bug, don't we? It's classic bug. Alright, we'll have a look at which one should we pick? Let's pick one that looks quite... No, you two look the same. I like how you're posed. I like this one. Pick you. Alright, so there's Enodeferon, which means Dawn Neferon. This is an extinct genus of carcinogid theropod dinosaur from Hell Creek, South Dakota. And its full name is basically Enodeferon infernalis, which is known from a partial hind limb. So this fossil material was found in the sediments of Hell Creek in Mooney County, South Dakota. And the specimen itself consists of a partial right hind limb and was prepared initially and purchased in 2020 for $5,000 by Kyle Edson Wildman. And then he donated the specimen to the Carnegie Museum of Natural History for research. And preliminary research actually suggested that the bones were actually those of a juvenile Anzu. And if you know Saurian, they actually kind of included that interpretation. This was basically their female, and then the larger Anzu was the male. It's a related dinosaur from a similar formation, so reasonable speculation. However, though, it was not a juvenile because they actually looked at the histology of the bones, and they indicated that the animal was skeletally matured as it died, and based on the observed lags or lines of arrested growth, the animal was in its 6th year of life when it died. And then in 2024, this species was described as its own thing. Enodeferon infernalis, which was a new species of the raptosaur. And the holotype includes the bones of the right leg, including the femur, tibia fused with the agrala calcacetum, and the metatarsus 3 and 4. The genus name itself comes from the ancient Greek word for eros, which means dawn, and Epheron, which was actually the generic name for the Egyptian vulture. So it's also referred to as the pharaoh's chicken. So, very vulture-like. And the name was chosen actually to honor the lead's author's pet Nile monitor. So that's the weirdest thing, to be honored who's named Pharaoh. And the species name Infernalis comes from Latin from hell, which is infernal, or inferno, basically, and to describe it because it's from Hell Creek. And the full binomial name also refers to the press nickname, the chicken from hell, given to Anzu. So it's kind of like a 3-way joke and reference and stuff like that. So looking at the size and everything like that in the description, the femur would have a circumference of about 10.58 centimeters, or just over 4 inches. That suggested the animal would have been about 78 kilograms in life. This is larger than a lot of other species of its relatives, things like Apatoraptor, Crostenoides, and Elmosaurus, but a lot smaller than Anzu, which was believed to be between 202 to 343 kilograms, or 440 to 700 pounds. So smaller So in this phylogenetic analysis, they found it to the sister taxon to Cypates and Elmosaurus. And the following cladogram that you can see on this picture here suggests it's related to them. Not that closely related to Anzu at all. Which is kind of hard because they're apparently supposed to be the same species, in some points. But, yeah, it would have lived with Anzu and would have been like a smaller relative. Yeah, very, very cool though. Definitely a big fan of this one. Let's carry on. Very, very cool. You run off and do your thing. Just make sure everyone runs out of there. So we're going to be starting with all the sauropods. We love talking about the sauropods. So first up, we're doing an alphabetical order. We're going to be starting off with, quote-unquote, Alamosaurus. So here we go. This is Alamosaurus. So love seeing some sauropods, and I got to say, Hawkal did a great job. Netraptor did the Interferion, but you can see Hawkal did a really great job with these guys here. So let's have a look. So this is Alamosaurus. So you can see there's a lot of changes that you can see from the original. It isn't all wrinkly and weird. You can see it's got really cool scale patterns. And we actually know from relatives of Alamosaurus and animals like that they did have osteoderms like this. So a really cool job to the pattern. You can see the neck here. You can see all these small scales as well. Their face is very similar to a lot of other later specimens of titanosaurs. Almost like convergently diplodocid, not weird like the other one. Came out really, really nice. Nice thick neck. I'm really happy with how the neck came out. Really gives a lot of heft. Big round body, correct legs, and look, correct feet. A lot of these later titanosaurs were literally walking on their metacarpals, or basically lost most of their finger bones. And as you can see there, and you can see the difference between the legs there. Big round body. And you can see the correct feet as well. We actually do have some skin tissue as well from the back feet of these titanosaurs and sauropods. And a lot of it would have been covered in skin as well. It's also been kind of depicted here. So that would have been used for, they've got that fleshy pad like elephants do to help with distributing weight, but also got these claws for grip and also to be able to dig in the ground. And you've got this much longer tail, We always go on about how Jurassic Park tends to make their dinosaurs' tails way too short. And it's a really, really awesome reconstruction of Alamosaurus, but unlucky for you guys, Alamosaurus is not this guy anymore. This is actually JWE2, so went from the first of the list to actually the bottom of the list, because it's a U. So JWE2, which means JWE-Titan, is an extinct genus of Titanosaurian from the late Cretaceous North America, and contains the single species Eutenotitan zelagaimondiunwene, very long scientific name, and is known from partial skeletons that were previously assigned to Alamosaurus, and is known from the North Horn Formation of Utah, the Black Peats and Javelina Formation of Texas. So it was first discovered in 1937 with a skeleton of a large titanosaur found in the North Horn Formation in Utah, and then it was all collected up and is actually quite well known. In 1946, it was originally named as, it was originally assigning them to Alamosaurus sinjuensis, which is what obviously this guy was, and from the Alamo Formation as well. And then some other kind of specimens have been referred to it, but the larger specimens, because the original kind of idea was that Alamosaurus was a smaller sauropod and was easy prey for T-Rex, but we found these giant ones. We had other specimens. There's additional surveys show that they found other specimens and stuff. But the name JWE2 first kind of came around and the third edition of Gregory S. Paul's The Prince and Fields Guide to Dinosaurs. And in 2025, Paul officially described Uetertitan Zelagaimondueni as a new genus and species of Titanosaur based on these fossil remains. The genus name itself refers to the Utes people of Utah, who is the native lands where this guy was found, and Titan, which obviously means large, and the specific name, Zelagaimondewenewe, honors Paul's grandmother, Zelagaimondewe, who lived actually near the type locality, so that's quite cool. Additional materials that could Allosaurus are now part of Alamosaurus part of this genus, and that big giant mount that you see, that the giant mount at the Permanent Museum is reconstructed based on several specimens, and it includes the forelimbs and tail of Uetertitan, but other parts could potentially be from certain affinities or Uetertitan. So Uetertitan was quite large. This is mentioned the largest specimens of Alamosaurus are now referred to Uetertitan, and proposed a minimum size of about 16 to 17 tons, and for larger specimens, about 20 to 24 tons. Though there's a mid-cervical vertebrae that suggests the animal would have been similar in size to Fucolongosaurus, which is 30 tons plus. And the ways it was, gone with this, without some good evidence, but there seems to be some differences within the skeletal anatomy between them. So, like in the scapula, it's a much larger and more prominent soldier blade, or the acromin process is larger. There's other small features that are larger in Alamosaurus and smaller in Uetertitan and stuff like that. There is about 6 or so different defining characteristics that define the species. And looking at it, Paul actually not only described a new species or genus, it also described a new subfamily, Uetertitaninae, which includes Alamosaurus and Uetertitan. And he did not perform a phylogenetic analysis or assign this subfamily to a more specific family, rather he just put it as Titanophora. So we don't know exactly where, and if we know, if you already know about Alamosaurus, we don't know really where it fits in the Titanosaur family tree. There's some, talk potentially being at its Altasaurid. Because it is North American, we don't know how they got to North America. Most evidence suggests it was a South American titanosaur that managed to migrate up. Some suggest it was Asian. Maybe it could be an endemic group now. Shows that we don't know how much we actually don't know about these giants. So I'm very interested to see how that's going to turn out in the future. But first off, we're going to let them run off and do their thing, like we always let them do. So good luck there, mate. I just always don't like them when they hang around here because they get in the way. But yeah, very, very cool. And you are you going to go in the way? No, they're going to walk away. All right, let's give it a try. So next up, we have got a Margosaurus, so another smaller sauropod, starting with A. So I gotta say, to be completely honest, I'm really in love with this pack. I just love sauropods. They're some of my favorites. But the scale detail on this is incredible. They've come out amazingly well. And you can see this is a great rendition of Amargasaurus. So it looks really, really cool. So you see some changes here. Because, the original Margosaurus, it did have the shoulders, the neck spikes. But also just looked like a modified Nigersaurus. Because that's what it was. You can see there's definitely very diplodocid in shape. Dicraiosaurid, like Dicraeosaurus and Nigersaurus and Suetsaia or something like that. So really, really cool. Love that long tail, very diplodocid. So these guys were a group of diplodocids. Very big round body there. You can see the accurate feet. So some of these earlier species had this kind of claw here. So a lot of later titanosaurs lost that claw. You can see the feet as well. You can see a bit more of that kind of fat around the feet there. They're going to have more skin. We do have actually pretty good skin impressions of the feet and hands of sauropods. So that seems I've been a lot more of different scales there. And really, I just love this. It just came out really nice. And you can see Amargasaurus is quite famous for its, kind of frill there, which comes down both sides. There's multiple different interpretations of it. Some people have interpreted it with some, like, a lump and then spikes. So this one is kind of interpreted as kind of a big fat lump, which I think is actually probably a really good way that he's done to interpret this. I think that looks really nice. There's a lot of evidence that suggests it was potentially a third of the way covered, but we don't really know. It's kind of one of those hard covered in keratin, but we don't really know. This is definitely a plausible interpretation, and it fits pretty well. A lot of people do it. It just looks like a weird fat lump, but I think what Hockel did with this one really makes it look quite nice and fits quite well on the animal. I got to say, I'm very, very impressed, Hockel. He always do a great job. So you can go away. I'll let you run off and do your thing, of course. God, I love these sauropods. How can you not love sauropods? Very beautiful animals. Let's make sure you just walk out of the way so I can release my big sauropods. Let's have a look. Come on. That's the one thing about worrying about these sauropods. They take a while. So this next one, we're going to Apatosaurus. There's two different species of Apatosaurus represented in this pack. And the first one we're looking at is Apatosaurus ajax. Here we go. I think we'll actually have a look at you. I like that one over there. He's just going. Come on. See, that's what I mean sometimes. These guys are very hard to organize. We'll have a look at you, because why not? I like this one. So this is Apatosaurus ajax. So Apatosaurus ajax was named, this is the type specimen, or type species, was named in March by 1877 by Ajax, who was a hero in Greek mythology. So he described the holotype initially as on an incomplete juvenile specimen, and the species is less studied than Brontosaurus or Apatosaurus louisiae because of the incomplete nature of that holotype. But there's been many other specimens that have been referred to it of like Kimmeridgian and early Tithonian ages, so about 150 million years old. In 2015, though, only the Ajax holotype was actually assigned, and other ones were either within Brontosaurus or their own taxon. However, some have been distinct, some can be distinguished from Ajax, so there's actually a little bit of taxonomy there, being a bit confusing. But Ajax seems to be, quite an interesting one there, and Ajax seems to be a really cool one as well because of its size. So Apatosaurus ajax, as I mentioned, the larger species. So Ajax are basically 11 to 30% longer than these specimens there. So this is the largest of them all. Upper estimates, some of the Oklahoma giant, suggest they could have got between 30 to 72 tons, so rivaling those large titanosaurs. And some even size estimates suggest a body length in 2020 of about 30 meters and 33 tons, based on mass analysis, but yeah, very, very large. So that's what Ajax is. There's the Oklahoma giant, which potentially those giant large lengths, but Ajax was considered the largest of all the apatosaurs. So really, really cool here. Nice to see these guys are here. I really love this reconstruction. You can see these guys are Diplodocids as well, so they are related to Amargasaurus and Diplodocus, but you can see they're very, very differently built. I really, really find it interesting. Even Barosaurus. Barosaurus has a very long neck, very long tail.
Diplodocus had, very long tail. These guys have a very thick neck, so you can see the difference there. You can see Apatosaurus. Originally, it was reconstructed with a Camarasaurid skull, but you can see this one's got this very almost like wide Diplodocus skull. Looks amazing. I got to say, I really love the scale detail on these. Really, really thick neck. That's kind of what Apatosaurus is famous for. And I really like as well, there has been some depictions of these potential like bosses on the chevrons of the Apatosaurus, which I think is a really cool thing. May not have been accurate, but still really, really cool. And I love the idea of, Bronto Smash and them using them to joust and hit each other with their necks, so like giraffes. Very, very cool speculation on my opinion. Really, really cool round body. See, these guys got a very stout body and a thin tail, just all in masses in that neck. Nice feet as well. You can see those feet are pretty spot on. With the thumb claw, these guys, a lot of these Jurassic guys are, as I mentioned, that kind of way inclined. Really, really awesome feet. And again, that really, really short tail there. So really fits with Apatosaurus. And I really like that neck posture as well. That neck posture is perfect. I'll get onto that with Diplodocus because it's the most notable. But you can see it's got that in heightened neck posture because there was a big debate on sauropod neck posture for a good while. But yeah, we're going to let you guys run off into your thing. Let you Apatosaur, get out of here. I think that was a bad joke, but that's alright. I'm allowed to make those occasionally. That's part of the fun of being me. Alright, so I think we're safe. So next up, we're going to have a look at the Apatosaurus louisiae. There we go. This is a louisiae. Another really cool one, not quite as extremely accentuated as, the extreme long necks. Extremely thick neck and long tail. This one's got a little bit more of a longer tail and not quite as thick a neck, but definitely noticeable. This is louisiae. So this one was named by Holland in 1916 and was first known from a partial skeleton in Utah. There have been some referred specimens to as well, and is known from a nearly complete skeleton and a skull, which is really cool. And all specimens come from the late Cambrian of the Dinosaur National Monument. In 2015, there was a big analysis that actually brought back Brontosaurus and split kind of these Brontosaurus and Apatosaurus into 5 different species. Ajax and louisiae being Apatosaurus, and Excelsis, Yahanapin, and Pravaris being Brontosaurus. So these guys, a lot of species such as Apatosaurus, Leucolistus was lumped back into louisiae as well. But louisiae, as I mentioned, kind of the difference as well. Not quite as large. About a little bit smaller. A louisiae, the type specimen's about 23 meters long and weighed about 20 tons. So, still a pretty large dinosaur, I'm not going to play an animal's 20 tons. Over 20, 25 tons. Very impressive animal still. And I got to say, I really do like it. Apatosaurus has had quite a complex taxonomic history. And, a lot of those species have been changed and redefined. But, Apatosaurus ajax is really, really cool. And louisiae is a really cool one, too. So you can see that neck posture has been improved as well. Very, very impressed. Very, very impressed. That's both the Apatosaurians done. I love the patterns on this one, too. I actually quite like the patterns on this one. And you can see it's still got that. And got the correct head. Again, it's known from a skull. You can see it's got a little bit more of a shorter skull. Not quite as wide and bulky as Ajax. It's a leaner, meaner version. Still a very bulky neck, long tail. Looks a little bit more proportioned compared to Ajax, actually, in my opinion. But yeah, very, very cool. definitely a big fan. You know, Hawk Owl knocking it out of the park. All right. So next up, we're going from A to B, and we've got probably one of my most favorite dinosaurs. We've got here Brachiosaurus. There we got Brachiosaurus, and I gotta say, I love this reconstruction. Beautiful. I love how tall and elegant it looks. They've Hawk Owl, just knocked it out of the park for this one. So let's see if we can get one. They're all turning around here. I want to get one in a good posture. Let's see. They're gonna be friendship by the looks of it, as they line up for friendship. Probably shouldn't be doing it right there, mate. They're trying to sort each other out. There they go. See, that's cool. Love the calls that they make. Jurassic Park did a great job with the Brachiosaurus. They did a lot wrong with the anatomy, but the aura it gives, is very impressive. Like the whale sounds fits Brachiosaurus quite well. So let me just actually get you positioned up in a good position. Alright, let's have a good look at you. So this is Brachiosaurus, very, very cool. So Brachiosaurus, the arm lizard from the Jurassic and, made very famous by Jurassic Park, was actually based on African species, which is in this pack as well, but it is in the next part and also is Giraffatitan. So Giraffatitan is, I mentioned, the African population. That's more what we based off because, frankly, Giraffatitan is better known. The Brachiosaurus from North America is not as well known. It was likely not very common in the ecosystems of North America either. Mainly because the main reason they seem to like dry environments and liked trees and stuff like that. And though they're very common in Africa for whatever reason. But you can see here the really, really awesome look. We might have a look at you because you've got a little bit of a better look on you. You look absolutely amazing. So you can see the Brachiosaurus face. You can see here really cool as well. You can see that I really love how that little spot there came out really nicely. Nostrils come all the way down the bottom often, especially if you see the Jurassic Park Brachiosaurus. You can directly see the nostrils are up here, but we actually think that they were down here. Really big butty head. Brachiosaurus, one of the main differences between a Giraffatitan and Brachiosaurus skull is that Giraffatitan had a little bit of a shorter muzzle. Brachiosaurus had that too, a little bit longer. Looks really, really lovely. Really just wonderful animal. Love that. Love how he's done the neck. Like it's got the perfect length, but also is really thick. Doesn't feel like too thick and flabby. It's just that perfect thickness. It makes it look solid. There's a lot of muscle. Even though their necks were actually impressively light, a lot of sauropods had air sacs in their vertebrae. In some species like Mamenchosaurus and their relatives, they got up to 95% air. So while they would have been remarkably strong, they would have been remarkably light. And I really like that as well. And it's cool how it comes down to the neck too. Really big fan. Almost, comes down. Almost all big shoulder blades. Very, very long body. You can see long body going down here. Brachiosaurus did have a little bit of a longer body. Not quite as a high slope as Giraffatitan, as we'll kind of see next episode. Very, very long limbs. You can see they're called the arm lizard for a reason because they've got their forelimbs are actually longer than their back limbs. Very similar to a giraffe. They're very similar in their ecology to giraffe. I'll actually see if I can get you to turn around. Oh, it's almost like you did it on cue, mate. Thank you. Oh, you beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Brachiosaurus. You can see that long, long limb there. And you can see it also ends as well in, the pad there. So these guys would have still had that, as I mentioned, the fingers and the claw there. Almost like a horseshoe going on around there. And then you've got these big back feet. Of course, very much like... Sorry, you can't really quite see there, but of course, very similar. and then the shorter tail. So they didn't need that long tail to counterbalance because they were much taller, as you can kind of see here. Very, very cool. So let you run off and do your thing, of course. The Mr. Brack. Brackety Brack. So next up, we've got the 3 Camarasaurus species. So they've all been accentuated there. So we've got first up, this is the smallest species. I like to do smallest to biggest. The first species we got here is Camarasaurus lentus. I love this one. It makes it look like a poison dart frog. I'm actually very impressed with that. So this is Camarasaurus lentus, which is the smallest of the Camarasaurus species. About 15 or so meters long, I believe. Yeah, about 15 meters long. There are 4 common species. Lusoni is sometimes lumped. It's kind of, others suggest it is, but it's mainly lumped into 3. Lentus, they can be distinguished from Grandis, and Lentus can be distinguished by their neurlarges, which are wider in Lentus. Supremus, which is the largest, the second largest, is also shows wide neurlarges, but broad, kind of like combination of features as well. So they also argued that they're separated in time. So this species here is Supremus. Lentus would have been the late Cambrian. So kind of the later one, and then Supremus would have been the very end of the Morrison, which is the holotype, but also the largest as well. And I imagine there's a lot of taxonomy going on with these guys, mainly because we don't know, like, you know, taxonomy being taxonomy. We don't have genetics to really tell the actual relationships. Usually it's just size and age. So it's very possible that these specimens may be lumped into, split into their own species or something like that in the future. It's just very hard to predict. But we're going to have a look at these guys here. The Camarasaurus, you know, looks so amazing. So again, this is the smallest one. Very thick neck. It's almost like a shock compared to, I think, the Camarasaurus in Gamers, the original one. And, you know, that very, very thick body. Very superficially brachiosaur. But yeah, they're not closely related. That closely related brachiosaurs. You can see long legs as well with, you know, that as well going on, that going on. We actually do have footprints of these guys that show the hind feet of sauropods are like that of elephants. And we do have some skin impressions of Camarasaurus that suggest that the second and fourth finger on the forefoot were actually wrapped together in tissue, which we'll get that there. There's also patches on the hind limbs that suggest they had polygonal scales. And so we do have tracks of these guys, which is very, very interesting. I'll get into it a bit later, but we do have some very, very interesting kind of stuff about their faces as well, their soft tissue. So I'll let them run off and do their thing. And the next species we've got is, let me check what the next species we've got is Grandis. So the next one's Grandis. Let's have a look at the grandest one. Yeah, these guys are very, very cool. So as I mentioned, this is Grandis. This is kind of the next largest. Oh, but this is the next smallest. Maybe not presented in the best order. That's fine. It looks really, really cool. We'll talk about the species. It's very, very cool. There you go. Pose. Let you pose. So Supremus is a little bit larger, about 17 meters. But really, I think a lot of these, with these guys, I think a lot of it is kind of
Very minor differences in anatomy, but you can tell them apart if you're a paleontologist. And there have been other species described, but this is kind of the next in size. As I mentioned, Grandis, it can be told apart from Lentis based on the neural arches on the foremost dorsal vertebrae. But yeah, very, very cool. Another cool guy as well. I love the different colours as well. You can see that difference in the skull there. This one's got like a little bit more of a Chad chin. Much shorter face. Looks really, really nice. You can see the nostrils at the front, as it should be. Love like the difference. You can see the big ridge there, the hexagonal scales at the top there. Came out really nicely. I like this because, you know, a lot of people depict sauropods with just lots of very, very small scales, but you can see here there's a lot of variety in the scales and the wrinkles and stuff like that. I think Hockow did a really great job with that. And you've also got the right feet and right here as well, as I mentioned, based on Camarasaurus. Came out really, really nice. So this is, as I mentioned, a Grandis. A really, really cool one. So I can actually double check for you. So we can go quickly look into the Genome Lab. So Genome Lab, we can go synthesized dinosaur, and we could go to Camarasaurus. So we can have a look at different ones here. So this is Supremus, that's Lentis, and Grandis. So that was correct. So you can go back and check. We'll save and exit because we're not going to do any more as well. That's fine. So we'll let them go off and do their thing. And we have a look at the last species, Grandis, or Supremus actually. So let's have a look at the Supreme. And the largest one, up to 23 meters in length. So here, this is Supremus, the Supreme Camarasaurus. So let's have a look at this guy. So I mentioned Supremus is the largest. You can see it's damn sight larger than the other ones. And you can see its large skull here. I'm going to say my favorite pattern out a lot. It looks really good. Same issues. You can see very bucket face. But what's really cool about this guy is that we do have evidence of a horny beak in Camarasaurus. So there was a study in 2017 that actually described soft tissue covering parts of the lower jaw and the teeth of a Camarasaurus that was actually nicknamed E.T. And this impression appears to have the animal's gums, indicating that the tuny crowns are partially enclosed in these gums. And such gums may explain why the sauropod tooth rows are found intact, even when they're isolated in the jaws. And the authors also suggested that the gums may have been covered by a horny beak, which have made of help cut vegetation while protecting the teeth. And the presence of such beak is consistent with the presence of small foramina, or openings and grooves, on the opening surface of the jaws, which would have contained blood vessels in life. And alternatively, these blood vessels could have supported lips like found in today's lizards. So yes, we don't have any preserved evidence of a beak on sauropods. It's very possible. It would be probably convergent, so like a really hard cornified skin, almost something superficial crocodile-like. But a lot of people have taken this interpretation as almost like a pseudo crocodile or tortoise beak, which I think is a really cool interpretation. I wouldn't go so hard to make it a big beak, but there's definitely a lot of hard skin around there, which makes sense. You're dealing with branches and stuff like that. You would want to protect your sensitive gums and stuff like that. So really, really hard skins. Lips, like really hard lips, kind of. They wouldn't have lips, like mammals would. No dinosaurs had lips like we do, because we have very specialized lips, for suckling and also, making sounds as well. Dinosaurs didn't really have those adaptations. They didn't really need them. But yeah, this is Camarasaurus. You can see very similar to the other ones. Really thick neck. I really love that thick neck. Came out really well. Big round body. A little of a longer tail. You see this is almost like a mini brachiosaur. You can see how look it is in comparison. Just not as long and lanky, but his body's nearly as big. Very, very long tail. And then you've got the head there. So as I mentioned, they are kind of described in their size, so by size. So Camarasaurus, the smallest species, most common species was Lentis, about 15 meters. Grandis and Lucio were comparable in size, estimated to be about 12 tons, and the latest species, which was Supremus, so this was the latest species as well, would have reached about 23 meters or 75 feet long and weighed up to about 40 tons. Though American paleontologist in 2024, Jarius Paul, called it about 18 meters and weighed about 24 tons. So it's still a very large animal. Very, very large. But yeah, we'll let you move on. So next up, we're going to be talking about Diplodocus. We've pretty much got all the Morrison sauropods done today. So today's been the Morrison plus a couple extras. But next up, we've got one of the species of Diplodocus that's managed to stand the test of time. We've got Diplodocus. What's the next first species? Diplodocus carnegie. Yep, we got the Dippy. Let's have a look at you there. I want to have a look at the more yellow, more reddish one. For an obvious reason. But here we got this really cool Diplodocus. Really, really big fan of how this one came out. So this species here is a smaller one. This is Diplodocus carnegie. We're named after Andrew Carnegie. Who is actually the best known this is the one that Dippy belongs to, that really famous Dippy, that is the near complete specimen is known as Dippy, by Jacob Watman, who found it, who was of the Carnegie Museum of Natural History in Pittsburgh, and then was also described and named by John Bell Hatcher in 1901. So this is kind of the definitive species as well. So even just recently, our understanding of sauropods has changed quite a bit, and that includes some of the coolest things. Actually, we had the Mother's Day sauropod, so let's talk about this, some skin impressions. So fossil skin of a Diplodocus was found at Mother's Day Quarry, which exhibits all these different scales. So even from the last time we discussed sauropods with the first version of these cosmetics, they changed so much from then, and we have a much better idea of sauropod integument. And based on these specimens as well, they had very different types of scales that included rectangular, polygonal, pebble, ovoid, dome, and globular scales. And they range in size between 1mm and 10mm, and some of these orientations may indicate where they belong to the body. So it seems that ovoid scales are more closely clustered together and look similar to scales in modern reptiles that are located dorsally. Other orientation consists of square rows that actually suggest interrupted by near patterning. That suggests they had arcing scale rows that look similar in scale and seen on crocodilian limbs. Suggesting the area may have been, the skin impression may have been from the limb of that Diplodocus. The skin fossils itself is small size, about 70 centimeters in length, but due to the vast amount of scale diversity that we see in such a small area, as well as the scales being smaller in comparison to other Diplodocus scale fossils, and the presence of small and potentially juvenile material in just Mother's Day Quarry, it is hypothesized that the skin may have originated from even a small or even juvenile Diplodocus. And what's very interesting is now we know the color of some of these sauropods. So in 2025, Gallagher et al. Had identified probable melanosomes representing diverse colors based on the microbodies found within the epidermis of the juvenile specimen of the quarry, and including the specimen described in 2021. And that suggests, as we kind of mentioned or kind of talked about, these kind of colors here. So these likely would have been reddish and browns and stuff, which seems to be a very common theme in sauropods, or the common theme in dinosaurs. Borealis was very much in that regard.
though there is talk potentially it may have been just that's how melanosomes decompose to give you that result. But reddish browns and blacks make sense for these large dinosaurs. Easy pigments to make, you know, and it just looks really, really cool. Helps with camouflage and stuff like that. And I got to say, this reconstruction is so amazing. I really love how this Diplodocus came out. I love the tail there, and I love the long tail. You can see that neck posture is perfect. We'll talk about it with Hallorum. You know, that long, skinny face there. You know, wide, long face, that long neck, big, round body, perfect feet there. Perfect, and that extra long tail. So yeah, definitely a big fan of this guy. I'll let you run off and do your thing, of course. See how you talk to each other. Oh, they're going to do the roundabout. They're very bad at moving, aren't they? Very, very cool. All right, so that's our last one here. Next one, we've got Diplodocus hallorum. Such a long neck on these guys. You can see much larger than Carnegie. Let's have a look at you. You look perfectly positioned there. Look at how amazing you look. So this is Diplodocus hallorum. So this guy was actually first described in 1991 by Gillette as Seismosaurus. So if anyone remembers Seismosaurus, it was known from vertebrae, pelvis and ribs. Its name honors Jim and Ruth Hall of Ghost Ranch. And George Oleski later suggested to amend the name as S. hallorum, using the genitive plural, and obviously, you know, amended the name. So it was Hawley, but now it's hallorum. In 2004, actually, a conference actually made a point that Seismosaurus was a junior synonym of Diplodocus, and this followed with a much more detailed publication in 2006 that not only renamed the species Diplodocus hallorum, but also speculated it could be proved to be the same as Diplodocus longus. So Diplodocus longus was lumped into hallorum, and then the Seismosaurus was lumped into Diplodocus. So much larger specimen. If you guys know much about Diplodocus, you know the Seismosaurus was famous for being one of the larger ones. So hallorum was much larger. So Carnegie was estimated to be about, you know, like 30 meters long or so. While, you know, as I mentioned, Carnegie was about 24 to 26 meters, or about 70 to 85 feet, and about 12 to 14 tons. Hallorum was even larger. So calculations had put it between, 39 to 45 meters, with some estimates potentially putting it up as 145 meters. But much more recent estimates put it to be about 33 meters, or just over 100 feet long, and weighing about 21 tons, because they were very long animals but not particularly heavy. So even though it may have not been the heaviest dinosaur, it's definitely still up there as one of the longest dinosaurs, comparable to like the giant Barosaurus and Supersaurus and some of the longer Titanosaurs. So even though it lost it's definitely still one of the longest. It's maybe not be one of the heaviest. You know, Argentinosaurus is probably 3 or 4 times as heavy, but very similar in length, which is very interesting as well. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, of course, is sauropod posture. So that's been something, the neck posture has been very heavily debated. So, you know, a lot of people used to drag their tails they think they grabbed their tails on the ground, and they basically couldn't fit their necks, or couldn't hold their necks above their shoulders. That was depicted walking with dinosaurs. But lots of evidence and stuff has actually been suggesting that sauropods would have been pretty much like most other dinosaurs and would have held their neck about a 45-degree angle, which is very much the basal condition in tetrapods.
And it would have had potentially a nuchal ligament as well, which they do not have withers as well, so they likely would have had some sort of ligament. Another hypothesized neck supporting ligament would have been something seen in like various seen in Struthiocamelus, which is ostrich. A 2009 study actually found that all tetrapods appear to hold the base of their necks at their maximum possible vertical extension as a normal alert pose. And unless sauropods were different from any other tetrapod ever, they would have held their necks in a similar way. So, based on that, a lot of people think, oh, but how do they pump their hearts and stuff like that? And that's still stuff that we don't 100% know. But the most recent consensus is, unless they were unlike any other tetrapod ever, which they kind of were, but it makes sense that they hold their neck like this at their maximum kind of alert frequency, and then they come down to graze. Even if you look at cows and stuff like that, it's very similar. They hold their necks at about a 45-degree angle along with their heads. So very similar way they would hold their necks like that. So yeah, really, really cool. And that is, Seismosaurus done for you. Diplodocus allurum. Very, very cool. Love to see all these sauropods. I love sauropods, man. They're some of my favorites. And we got the Morrison ones down, so that's all the Morrisons. And we got a couple Titanosaurs. We've got a Titanosaur and another couple Cretaceous ones loaned in. But don't worry, next time we've got a lot more planned. We've still got Giraffatitan and Dreadnoughtus, all the different species, 6 different species depicted here of Mamenchosaurus and Nigersaurus, which is coming in the next part. But we're going to be going on from giant dinosaurs. We're going to giant cephalopods. And this is a really cool new recently described animal that I really want to talk about here. We've got Nemanotethus. So let's have a look at this guy. So let's release you. So look at you. Let's see if we can get you to swim a bit deeper. I want to get a good look at you under the water. I don't want you diving. I want you underwater, mate. There we go. Perfect. So this is Nemegdoteuthis or Magnetotethus. So this is actually an extinct genus of octopus from the late Cretaceous of Canada and Japan, and is known only for isolated beaks, just like most other species of ancient or giant animals. I like this. It's cool to see that giant and colossal squids have been dethroned as well. So the species Nemegdotethus hagiteri may have been among the largest cephalopods ever to live, with an estimated total body length. It ranges quite a bit, from about 6.6 to 18.6 meters. Though, so between 22 and 61 feet. Though a lot of them, are doubted at the large size. But again, the type specimen itself was named, which is Jaskinski, was named by Ketsuge Tanabe and colleagues in 2008 and assigned to the order Vampiromorphidae, which includes the vampire squid. The holotype itself was discovered in Pender Formation on Vancouver Island, Canada. And then colleagues also named other species of the Saurate octopus as well. And that gets derived from the Pender Formation. And then 2 other specimens or 2 other species were named from, Japan as well. But in 2026, Garmati and colleagues synonymized Nemanotethus and Paleocurotethus, with the former having priority because it was first name, and reclassified it as a genera of Saurate octoputs based on the morphology of the beak. So if you don't know what the Serrata group of octopus are, they're very much like a very interesting group of octopods. You can see they've got they have small they're a type of octopus with a small internal shell and 2 fins on the head. A great example would be the Dumbo octopus, so they're common like a giant Dumbo octopus. But they were relumped or lumped into there and kind of all lumped into Nemanoteuthis. But in previous publications, based on the proportions of extant vampire squids, the mantle would have been estimated to be about 54 centimeters, 21 inches, 70 centimeters long, and as long as about 2 meters. So a huge animal, but it was 2026 where this animal got bloody enormous. So if you compared, there are pictures in the paper, I'm not going to put them up here because I'm not that good at editing, but
if you look at the beak compared to the beak of things like giant squid, it's like just about twice the size. So that shows how large this animal was. In 2026, they measured the body length. They measured the hood length of the species Agriteri about 84.1 millimeters or 3.4 inches, and would have had a hood about 1.5 times larger than that of the giant squid, or largest giant squid. The estimated mantle length was about 0.6 to 1.84 meters, or about 6 foot long, suggesting an animal between 2.8 and 9 foot, 25 foot long. And they also estimated the length of... Oh, what's happening there? There we go. They also estimated the mantle length of Hagiteri about 1.8, 5.2, and would have been the animal between... based on Stratotethus and based on different sort of animals like Steratethus and Ceratotethus. So the estimates vary quite a bit based on what the animal's based on, and some of the other estimates have actually based it between 6 to 18 meters, or 22 to 61 feet, based on Steratethus sterinus, which is known as the bioluminescent or the glowing sucker octopus. The smaller estimates between 2.8 to 7 meters are based on Cytotethus mulleri, which is a species of octopus that is restricted to the Arctic Ocean and the far North Atlantic. So based on those proportions, the animal would have been that size. So a lot of them have doubted the upper size limits of the 18 meter plus one. That stated the estimates are quite extreme, and also noted their level of uncertainty because the animal is only known from jaws, and the rest of the animal is soft tissue, so we don't really know. But I would say, in my personal opinion, estimates of between some of the like 6, 7, 8 to 6 meters is definitely really good. It was clearly a huge animal, based on those specimens. The those 18 meter plus is kind of ridiculous, but I could easily see a 6 to 8 meter range is definitely possible for this guy. Maybe a little bit bigger, but because if you ever look at the picture compared to the giant squid beak to this guy's beak is impressive, man. But based on the ecology of the wear patterns of both jaws, they actually looked at the cephalopods and suggested they had fed on a diet of animals with harder shells than their chitinous jaws. And the authors also rubbed out abrasion on rocks as a probable cause. And the specimens studied were found in sediments of deep, low-energy conditions. Researchers actually suggested that these huge finned octopuses, which are often compared to the mythical kraken, and the Triassic kraken is real, technically now, but it's not Triassic, it's Cretaceous, so the Cretaceous kraken, which I think sounds a little bit better. It actually competed with vertebrates in the North Pacific Ocean and were top predators there in the late Cretaceous epoch, which I find very interesting as well. So it's almost like, just as today, sperm whales have got to compete with giant squids, mosasaurs and stuff had to compete with, Nematoteuthis. So in convergent evolution as well, cephalopods and vertebrates acquired jaws and lost their exoskeletons, leading to the appearance of apex predators in both groups. Other paleontologists not involved in the study actually stated the fossils are not definitive proof of apex predators competing with consuming larger vertebrates. I don't that seems a bit of a stretch. Maybe they would have done it occasionally, but I don't see these guys potentially living up in there grabbing stuff. I could easily see them as being like the ancient equivalent of a giant squid. But again, we only know them from beaks. We're not going to know that much, And if you look at their relatives, like the modern ones, they don't hunt things much larger than themselves at all. So, like Ceratoteuthis, something like that, or if you want to look at Steratotethus, which is another one that's been talked about as well, they feed mostly on like crustaceans and stuff like that. So I don't see how they would be competing with, things like Tylosaurus, Tylosaurus Rex, as everyone likes to put now. Bloody Tylosaurus Rex. I hate that they did that. It's funny, but I hate that they did that. This shows paleontology. We love our jokes. But anyway, I think that's a really cool mod. This mod was done by JWE2, and JWE2 had done an amazing job. I really love that I get to talk about all these new discoveries. 2026 has been very eventful in terms of discoveries, and there hasn't been many mods that give me the opportunity to talk about them, and this is the perfect one. And there's going to be some more coming up, don't worry. I've already got part 107 planned. So yeah, I think this is a great place to finish off. So I'm going to thank everyone. Thank you, Netraptor, for your Inopherion. You did a really good job with that. Thank you, Tribu28, for Malathethus. Really, really awesome to show off an animal. I wouldn't otherwise have a chance. And I've got to thank Hockowl. Hockowl, you did a really good job with all your sauropods. You did a really great job in updating that anatomy. You did an amazing job. I'm very, very happy. And I'm happy to cover that next time, finish it off. So yeah, I think this is a great place to end the video. So I really, really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to click the little bell icon to get notified about anything. See if you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. And bye-bye.